All right, continuing. Now I've got my layers. But what if I don't like some of them? I can just delete those layers and bring in some of the new ones I found. And as long as they're 1,000 by 1,000 pixels, it's going to work. And as soon as you drag and drop them in, they come in as a smart object, which means they're referencing to that outside file, which is over 1,000 pixels. And so you want to size it first. You can even right-click and warp it, really distort it, before you rasterize it, because that's going to guarantee you get the best resolution, the best pixel quality from it. I'm just going to move it a little bit with the move tool. And now to clean it up, what do I need to do? Yeah, so if I want it really clean, there's little fragments of gray, even though it's a pretty good scan of like a coloring book page. So I'm going to first go to rasterize it, right-click on the layer, rasterize. Then I'm going to go to Image Adjustment. This will help all of your layers, even the ones that look pretty clean. And I only want blacks and whites, so I can just squeeze these pretty close together. Now, if I put them right on top of each other, that's going to start to look what's called posterized, where it gets what's called bitmap mode, where there's only black and white pixels. And that's a little harsh. It's not as smooth as I want. So instead, I want a little bit of space between them so that those lines are softened by some different gray pixels. But still, the background's purely white. The lines are purely black. That's a lot better than it was before. You see how much cleaner? So levels, and Seth, I think you were asking about that, right? So this is what I brought in, zoomed in. If I play with levels, I can really tighten it up. So the blacks are more black, the whites are more white, and all those in-between ones are left out. So that's done under Image Adjustment Levels. And you want to do that after you rasterize it. Yes, it should. Now, what's tricky is if you have a white background turned on behind it, you can't always tell what you're selecting. So that's why I like to have just the checkerboard showing, because that's empty space. But we'll get to there. So now, how do I get rid of the white space? I'm going to use my magic wand, contiguous unchecked, and now I click on all the whites, but I don't have a layer selected. So I'm going to select that layer first. Remember, you can only do selections within the layers you selected. So now I click on the white, and if I zoom in, now it's a much cleaner selection because there's not a halo around each of the lines anymore. And then I just hit delete. And now it's nice and crisp. And I hit Command D to deselect. But what about if I want to get rid of the black lines? Like I don't want this anymore. Well, then I recommend you just use your lasso tool. We're just learning some basic selections. Lasso and magic wand. And I just lasso around it, hit delete.
I was actually just doing that. I was going to ask, when you end up going on the black area, that doesn't matter, right? That's not going to affect anything.
Oh, yeah, when you go outside of the image parameters, there can be content out here. For instance, if I move this, you can see those white there. So it will save that content. But no, I can't affect anything that's not in my image area.
Okay, so it has to be inside.
So for instance, if I lasso here and then delete, I've got to select the layer first. I believe, I might be wrong. I haven't tried this in a while. Oh, no, that did erase from it.
So it does affect it.
So it can affect it if you select outside of it.
Okay.
But basically, you don't want to be affecting things you can't see.
Right.
And only the things you see are the things that are going to print, like within this image area. Everything else can get cropped off pretty easily. All right, notice how I just erased that eye. And so I can kind of play with it, make it a little bit more interesting. Now let's go to the next layer underneath. How can I clean it up? Well, first I need to rasterize it. Right-click, rasterize. It's already sized pretty well. But if I want to change it more, I can go to Image, Transform. Not Image, sorry. Edit, Free Transform. And I can right-click inside and do things like warp, push and pull it, play with perspective, play with distort. We're going to use that on the next exercise too, warping and transforming vector shapes. But right now we're doing it with pixel line art. Hit return. Now I want to clean it up. So I go to image adjustments, levels. Image adjustments, levels. Oh, I got to select the layer. I don't know why it keeps deselecting my layer. Image adjustment levels. And now you can see how clean that one is. There's only a spike here, only a spike there. That means if I zoom in, I'm not really going to see much except for black and white. But it doesn't mean I can't optimize it a little bit just by pushing these in a little bit. So that all those blacks get a little bit darker, all those whites get a little bit brighter. Now I'm going to erase all the white using the magic wand. Delete. And then I'm going to use my lasso and get rid of the things I don't want. I have to deselect with Command D before I make a new selection with the lasso, and delete. And I really like the paper doll kind of cowboy outfit, but I don't really love these glasses and these eyes. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that with my lasso. Boom. This doesn't need to be perfectly clean. It just needs to be 5 layers composited together into an original composition. So now, right now I have this. And maybe, well, I have those 2 layers showing. I want to use my lasso and I want to erase a little bit more from this guy, like this forehead, so that those shapes kind of spill into each other. That could be interesting. Or I can use the lasso to select within these 2 shapes. So if I turn the contiguous on, it will only select touching pixels, which also works for empty space. So I'm going to select the empty space, hold down Shift, add to that selection, select the empty space of both of those. This is what's cool. Deleting that from this doesn't do anything because it's already deleted. But if I move that selection, because that selection is still there, even if I select a different layer, and then I delete it from this, then when I layer the 2 of them up, those spaces are held empty. So I can do the same thing with my lasso for inside the glasses there. Delete. Same thing. It just depends what layer you're on. And then delete them from another layer. So that's a good way of kind of getting line art to match, especially if it's line art that's nicely contained, like this cowboy hat from this layer with my lasso. Then I can delete that from the layer on top. Okay, let's go to the next layer. This is far too much fun. There's a lot of muddiness here I can clear up, but I'll do that a little later. Because the first thing I want to do is make sure I have 5 layers. So now here's the challenging one. I can turn off my other layers. This one has color in it. How can I get clean black line art from the color? Well, the first thing I want to do is edit, free transform, make it the size I want, rotate it, shift it, warp it. I've already done that a little bit with it. I got to make sure I'm on the right layer though. So you go to edit, free transform. The shortcut for that is Option Command T for Photopea. Option Command T. So I'll be doing that a lot. And I'm actually going to take this whole warped rectangle from the children's book, fit it on, and then right-click, warp it, kind of make it into my own shapes. Like stretching cookie dough. Hit return. Now I can rasterize it. Right-click, rasterize. That allows me to take out everything but the black lines. So because this is more than just black and white, I'll zoom in, I go to Image Adjustment Levels. That's always your first step. And I bring those together. I brighten the whites. I darken the blacks. But even if I bring them really close together, you'll see, yeah, the line art's nice and clean, but then there's a lot of these really saturated colors. It's because it's a color file. So I say okay. And now, just to get the black lines, I'm going to use my magic wand in a different way. Instead of using it to select the whites and erase, I'm going to use it to select the black. And I want it to be non-contiguous. So uncheck the contiguous. So it selects all the black pixels everywhere. Selection looks like that. Now I'm going to flip the selection by going to select inverse. That means everything opposite of what I just selected is selected. So this will be everything except the black lines. And now when I hit delete, all that color and white will be gone. So I just have black line art. Then I might want to clean up some more with my lasso, like get rid of things like the speech bubbles, because they can be really distracting. Get rid of things like the eyeballs. And remember, you don't need to be too perfectionist about it. I might just take big, kind of kidney-shaped lumps out of it. Just kind of delete them so that they become more about the lines than anything else. Maybe I don't want these solid lines at the bottom. Maybe I do. It's all a matter of visual taste. Right. I think I actually do want that, so I'm going to go Command Z. Right now I've got 3 layers. If I layer them all up together, this is what I get. I might decide, oh, let's take this one. Actually, I want to leave that where it is. But maybe take the one I just did. Maybe I want to flip it. So I'm going to go to Edit, Free Transform, right-click, flip it horizontally. Maybe rotate it a little bit differently. That's pretty interesting. I like how it lines up with the cowboy hat. Okay, now 2 more. The reason I require 5, it's really hard to take 5 images, merge them together, and not get something that's original. The only way you don't get that is if you're too precious with each of them. This isn't about highlighting each image in its own place. You are not laying them out on a poster. Instead, we're combining them together, jumbling them up. Like you're taking these printouts and you're crumpling them up and then throwing them in the trash, right? We're creating our own entity. So now with this new layer, make sure it's selected. I'm going to delete the type. This is one I cleaned up last class. I'm going to get rid of some of these identifying indicators. Let's see how that circle looks. And then while the others are up, maybe I move it around. Where do I want this circle? As long as you have auto select unchecked, this is important for the move tool. It can be really frustrating otherwise. Have auto select as a tool option unchecked, and then as long as you have the layer selected, it can move just that layer, even if there are other layers on top of it. So if I want to move the circle down here to kind of line up a little bit better, I will. And then I might use my lasso to delete the top part of it that I think is messing up the flow of my image. I may take a big clump from inside and just delete that. Another big clump and just delete that. Okay, the last image. I isolate it with the eyeball. It's this. Yep, not Command T. Option Command T to get to the transform box. Or you can go to Edit, Free Transform. Let's make it bigger. Let's get rid of some of those identifying marks. Mostly eyeballs. That's what makes a character recognizable. And then you're feeling free to warp and distort everything else. Empty out most of the inside. Now, what if I want to thicken these lines? Or just get rid of something? I'm going to show you kind of a special technique. I've helped a few students with it, but I haven't demoed it on this assignment yet. So if I want to thicken these lines, what I can do is double click on the layer. Not on the layer preview, but on the layer itself. Double click and you'll open something called layer styles. And the only layer style I really want you to play with for this is what's called stroke. because we're dealing with line art, if you click on stroke,